By the time we realized that this was mental health related, it was already too late. Things had escalated so much that none of us could recognize who this person was anymore. He talked a lot about being the god of war, and I didn't really know what that was, but I did know that it was a video game he used to play, and in the story, apparently this guy goes into rage mode and ends up killing his wife. It seemed as though every single game and movie he had ever seen in his life was being reenacted in his mind. To be honest with you guys, I didn't think it was going to last more than 2 to 3 weeks. The same day I was granted the restraining order, my family went home because they assumed I was protected. The only problem was he wasn't served yet and he had no idea that I had done that. Because I had his location, I could see where he was, and he was always driving around aimlessly, but the scary thing was he only lived 7 minutes down the road. Normally, I'm never able to sleep without a fan, but there was no way I was going to bed without being able to hear everything that happened in this house. At this point, I haven't told the kids what was happening yet, so I just told them we would have a slumber party in my room for the night. I felt like I was never getting any good sleep at the time, and I would always wake up to look at his location. Genuinely, that was something I was so grateful for because it wasn't only for my peace of mind, but also because I was worried about him and where he was going and where he would end up. I was so afraid something would happen to him, so I was constantly looking at where he was. Around 1 a.m. that night, I happened to wake up and look at his location, and luckily he was nowhere near me, but he was driving around. I tried to go back to sleep, but my mind was still half awake. Just when I felt like I was starting to drift off, I got a notification on my phone from my Ring doorbell with his car pulling up into my driveway. The scariest part about that was he had my garage door opener. Luckily, I had changed the garage door code earlier that day. Otherwise, I don't know what would have happened. When I tell you my heart sank, I can't even put it into words. I just looked at the kids and I looked at the Ring doorbell and I ran into my closet. I immediately called 911 because based on the text messages I was getting from him, I did not feel safe. I had a front door camera and a garage door camera, so I could see that he was going from my front door to the garage and back and forth. When I called 911 that night, I was so scared. You constantly hear about the worst possible scenario happening. I was afraid that something would happen and he would get hurt. I begged and pleaded for the police to understand that this was mental health related. While I was waiting for the police to get there, I was watching the cameras and he would switch between his normal voice, which was just innocent and fun, and a second voice, which was very deep and demonic. This is not a person who would ever put hands on me or the kids ever in our lives, but I didn't recognize the person who was at my door. The police happened to get there about 3 minutes after I called, and they tried to talk him into going with him to a hospital, but he refused to even talk to them. Because he hadn't done anything illegal, they obviously couldn't do anything. When the police came inside to speak with me, I'd shown them the restraining order that I had received that day, but I told them that he didn't know about it and that I haven't served him yet, so they went ahead and served him for me. My heart was just breaking because in my mind, I just felt like he was in there somewhere and I didn't want him to think I was abandoning him or didn't want him to be around, but I just truly didn't know who that person was anymore and I was scared. Police were telling me that he wasn't cooperating with them and that they would have to let him go. So I begged the police to let me go out and speak with him in their presence. When I walked outside, I couldn't help but cry because I was looking at a person that I had known for the last 10 years, but I didn't recognize him. He didn't have a shirt on, but I happened to have a sweatshirt and a sports bra under, so I took off my sweater and gave it to him. I was hoping that seeing him would ground him back to reality because at this point I hadn't seen him in 2 weeks. I begged and pleaded with him to just please trust me and to go to a hospital because this wasn't him. Despite our divorce, I obviously still cared about him. I thought it would be long enough not to get emotional, but here we are. As the father of my kids and my ex, I obviously still cared about his well-being. Luckily, he did agree to go voluntarily, so the police had taken him in. And within those few hours that he was there, it went from voluntary to involuntary hold. At that point, he was on a 5150 hold, and I was so hopeful that this was the end, that things would get better from here. This was all happening December 14th of last year, just a few weeks before Christmas. So I was hoping that this hospital would help him and he would get out and be normal again. When he got there, he thankfully put me as the emergency contact, even though legally he wasn't allowed to with the restraining order. But every single day I checked in with the nurses and the doctors, and I made sure that they knew that this was not normal behavior, this was not his usual character, and this was completely out of the blue. Unfortunately, he fought them tooth and nail and told them that he couldn't take medication for religious reasons. 8 days later, I got a call from a doctor telling me that they were going to release him, and I begged them not. I begged them and told them that they were making the wrong decision and that he was going to end up hurting himself or someone else. Did end up releasing him after 8 days, even though he had no one to watch after him. Unfortunately, the story doesn't end here, and things just happened to get so much worse once he started posting online. In the next few stories, I might become really passionate or emotional over what happens because I still hold a lot of anger over what happened in the following weeks.